शुभं करोति कल्याणम् आरोग्यं धनसम्पदा शत्रुबुद्धिविनाशाय दीपज्योति नमोस्तुते।
Good evening all. On behalf of ICRDE, International Center of Resource Development for Educators, I welcome today's speaker, Dr. Mrs. Ambuja Ayer, former HOD S.N.D.T University. She is also our mentor. I also welcome each one of you present here for our 7th Tuesday webinar series. ICRDE has been launched on World Teachers' Day, that is on 5th October 2021. Since launch, we have conducted 6 Tuesday webinars, a 2-day national conference, and a talent unfold session for teachers. ICRDE offers opportunity to experiment and implement ideas, innovations, and collaboration to achieve performance and continuous professional excellence. ICRDE is where confluence of like-minded individuals share and imbibe knowledge, experience through interaction, deliberation, and international exposure. We have 6 well-known and experts in the field of education on advisory panel. Also, we have ICRDE mentors and ambassadors to achieve our objectives fulfilled. I request all the educators who have not become the member of ICRDE so far to become the members by logging into www.cirdi.in members arena. In order to move further for today's program, I request Mrs. Sheija Menon, an ICRDE member and a senior teacher from Vivek Vidyalaya, Mumbai, today's master of ceremony, to introduce the speaker and go ahead with today's program. Mrs. Sheija, please go ahead.
Namaste, good evening, and a hearty welcome to all of you. On behalf of International Center for Resource Development for Educators, ICRDE, I, Sheija Menon, once again welcome you all to our 7th session of Tuesday webinar series on the topic Strategies and Trends in Pedagogy. Before we begin with our session, a brief introduction about ICRDE, International Center of Resource Development for Educators, is the initiative of educators Dr. Suresh Nair and Mrs. Deepa Desai. It is a platform where teachers and educators are maneuvered to excel and mentor the student community through local and international mentorship. ICRDE offers opportunity to experiment and implement ideas, innovations, and collaboration to achieve performance and continuous professional excellence. ICRDE is where confluence of like-minded individuals shares and imbibe knowledge, experience through interaction, deliberation, and international exposure. And now that we are aware of the objective of ICRDE, let me introduce you all the president of ICRDE, Dr. Suresh Nair. Dr. Suresh Nair, a state awardee, is the principal of Vivek Vidyalaya and Junior College. With more than 34 years of experience in the field of education, he has always risen to the challenge of widely varying positions and responsibilities. Welcome, sir. Welcome, Dr. Suresh, sir.
Thank you.
And now let me introduce the Secretary of ICRDE, Mrs. Deepa Desai. Mrs. Deepa Desai has been in the field of education for the last 36 years and is a recipient of many awards. Former principal of AVM Juhu, ICSE, the founder principal of MPS Kalba Devi, a CBSE school in South Mumbai, and former head of IES, Manik Vidya Mandir. She's a woman of many talents, an inspirational educationist, passionate teacher, motivating leader, and a compassionate person. These are all the adjectives that best describes her. In totality, a vibrant personality, right? Welcome, ma'am.
Thank you. Thank you, Shrija.
And now, without much ado, let us dive straight into the topic, Strategies and Various Trends in Pedagogy by Dr. Ambuja Ayer. And before we move ahead, let me introduce you all to the key speaker for today, Dr. Ambuja Ayer. Dr. Ambuja Ayer is a distinguished educationist, having done a master's in science as well as in education. She did a doctorate in education, topic being curriculum and curriculum evaluation. Between 1995 and 2005, she held the prestigious position as the head of the Department of Education Management, S.N.D.T, Women's University. Friends, when I went through Dr. Ambuja's CV, I was wonderstruck at the list of achievements and numerous positions that she held over the years. A teacher trainer, a research guide, curriculum designer, principal, educational management consultant. The list is exhaustive. You name it and she's there. So Dr. Ambuja, I welcome you once again, and this virtual platform is all yours.
Thank you, Shrija, for your generous introduction. Good evening to each one of you. And before I start, I would like to thank Dr. Suresh Nair and Mrs. Deepa Desai for having given me this platform to share my views. The topic was chosen between both of us, me and Dr. Desai. And I was also given the option to choose the topic. And when she talked about teaching, I jumped onto this. Before I go to the real topic, to lighten the mood, I would like to share a small snippet with you. And it's a very interesting one because it relates a lot to the topic of the day. The snippet is about 4 or 5 different animals who live in the forest. And usually you find 5 wild animals, but these animals are not wild animals. You have the dog, you have the bird, you have the rabbit, you have the squirrel, and then a slow learner eel. And these animals come together and they decide that we have to do something. And in consultation with the king of the forest, they decide to bring about a curriculum. They want to be educated, so they come together and design a curriculum. Now, how do they design the curriculum? They sit together and discuss, and each animal puts forth its views. The squirrel says, I know how to climb trees. The rabbit says, I know how to burrow. The fish says, I know how to swim. The bird says, I know how to fly. And so a curriculum is drawn with all these aspects kept in mind. Now, after this curriculum is drawn, they decide that it's mandatory for each of these animals to be equipped with all these subjects. They agree upon it. And so the instruction goes on, everything goes on, and then comes the evaluation. Now it's the turn of the bird. The bird gets an A+ flying, but then it tries to burrow, breaks its beak in the bargain, and can't do anything else, neither can fly nor swim, and so miserably fails. Then it's the turn of the squirrel. The squirrel burrows, but can't do much, gets a C grade, but climbs the tree very well, gets an A+. Similarly, the fish gets an A+ in swimming, but loses out on the others. Now it's the turn of the rabbit. The rabbit burrows and does a good job, gets an A+, tries to climb the tree, but falls down a number of times and injures its head badly and fails in the remaining subjects. The dog, unfortunately, doesn't have anything to do with any of these subjects. So it starts barking and arguing with the others. You didn't allow me to share mine, and fails in all the subjects. Now it's the turn of this slow learner eel. And this eel somehow manages to get a C- and wade through the course. Finally, it is only this slow learner's eel which succeeds in all the subjects, and it is declared a valedictorian. Now, I want to draw a parallel with this small snippet that I told you with our education system. I want you all to reflect on the learners who come to our classrooms. They come from diverse backgrounds. Some don't have even the parents are first generation learners, so they don't have a background where academics are of importance. There are some others who come from a richer background. Then we look at IQ, we find students with high IQ, moderate IQ, and low IQ. So when we look at this mix, what type of education are we going to give? And we find that our system is a little complex in this. We try to promote one single way of teaching, and we enforce the same on our learners too. You have to accept it this way. This raises the question that with changing times, are we ready to equip our children with certain other methods of learning? Let me narrow down to my topic. It's trends in teaching methods, different trends. It's a talk called as pedagogy. And I'll go a little further. Let's talk. I would like the first slide to be put forth. Next slide. Yes. When you look at this slide, you have a seed on one side and the fruit on the other side. You sow the seed, but you don't get the fruit on the same day. The seed goes through a process of nurture. And this nurture is provided by the environment, the soil, the water, the sunlight. And then over a period of time, it grows into a tree, bears flowers and fruits. So this nurture that takes place from the seed to the fruit is over a period of time, and nurture itself has an inner meaning within it. It's taken care of, done with concern. It's not an aggressive approach. Similarly, when we look at our learners who come to us and then graduate later, our job is to nurture. And this process of nurture, though I put two broad areas, we try to develop convergent thinking on one side, and on the other side, we try to develop divergent thinking in them, so that ultimately they become responsible citizens of society. Convergent thinking is done through our content, our curriculum, and it goes off very smoothly. The divergent part becomes a little challenging because here we have to focus on various areas. Do I want my learners to observe things and record? Do I want them to experiment? Do I want them to be exploratory? Do I want them to make comparisons with their content and other issues around them? Do I want them to be reflective thinkers? Do I want them to be a researcher? So there are so many questions that can be asked. Some of this aspect in our system is not taken care of well. Nonetheless, it's important that if you want to make a well-balanced product, then positively both these aspects should be taken care of. This exactly is nurturing in education, and the teacher plays a very important role in this process. Next slide. Let's look at this. Everyone knows the definition of teaching, but The term engagement with learners to enable their understanding and application of knowledge, concepts, and processes, resulting in active construction of knowledge. Now, this term engagement is the essence of teaching. If you don't engage your learners, no teaching takes place. Now, what does this term engagement mean? You're involving the learners, you're grabbing their attention, you're motivating them, you're creating a sense of excitement for them to learn, you're building curiosity in them so that they start finding out things and learn further. So this term engagement is very important in teaching. And if we do not care about this word and just talk of teaching as a tripolar process and a very technical process, it doesn't work. Because teaching basically is very dynamic. It's a very complex activity. And it's an art as well as a science. Earlier, it used to be considered as an art only, but today it's more of science than art. You are a made teacher today. Earlier, it was only you were a born teacher. Because of the repertoire of skills present in teaching, approximately there are 64 skills a teacher is trained in to become an effective teacher. So with this background in mind, we see that teachers need to build their conceptual skills at the same time, human skills and managerial skills. So if we look at teaching more as science than an art, we all can be very effective teachers. Next slide, please. Teaching is a tripolar process, and I've written penta-polar. And I object to this term tripolar. And I'll give you the reasons why a little later. Tripolar, very simple. Why am I teaching? I'm looking at the content or the topic in front of me, and why am I teaching this particular topic? I'm going to teach fractions to a class 3 or 4 student. Why am I teaching this? What do I want him to know? Based on that, and also there are standard objectives outlined by the Department of Education, I frame the learning outcomes. I want him to identify the numerator and the denominator. I want him to write a fraction. I want him to identify a fraction. I want him to solve addition sums or subtraction sums on fraction, and so on and so forth, depending upon the level of the student. So I frame my learning outcomes. So that is why am I teaching? And if teachers emphasize this aspect, teaching is half done because they know exactly how to go about it. The next is, what am I teaching? What relates to content? What relates to topics and subtopics present? So I'll not delve much into it. The third aspect is, how am I going to teach? And that's again very important because we are talking about pedagogy today. How deals with pedagogy? What different methods am I going to employ? What kind of learning experiences am I going to provide to my learners so that they grasp information? And are they matching with the objectives that I outlined? So this, you can see the arrows on both the sides. So there is interaction between why, what, and how the teacher teaches directly goes to the evaluation part. Now, evaluation and why are, you can say, mirror reflections of each other. So when we talk of the why part, the evaluation, the teacher then looks at the learning outcomes mentioned and tries to find out what exactly had I written there? Did I ask them to identify, add, subtract, and ask similar questions? And then she's really a satisfied teacher saying that my teaching is good, it's complete if the class achieves well. Why did I say it's a pentapolar process? Because after evaluation is never considered in this tripolar. Because you are constructing, the earlier definition says constructing knowledge. So when do you construct? It's only after evaluation and positive results are seen. And so for that, what do? We just go ahead with the next unit? No, we look for a feedback. Now, this feedback has to be again related to your learning outcomes that you mentioned. Okay, you're weak in this particular area. You have committed a grave mistake here. And then the student goes for remedial instruction. Some of this area also does not get much importance in our system of education. And it's only here when the student is weak in some area, the teacher goes back to the learning objectives. She may do it for few students who have not fared well. She may not do it for all, but she has to repeat the cycle. And that's why I say it's a penta-polar process. Feedback and then remedial instruction, and once again testing has to take place to find that 100% mastery has been achieved by the learner. Next slide. There are some premises that I've just mentioned. The teacher enters the classroom and she's ready for a pedagogy, a method that she wants to teach. This is a live classroom I'm talking about. Has she created mental readiness in her pupils? Has she motivated them? Are they ready to accept new knowledge? That's very important for every teacher, and each one of us knows much about all this. It's just a repetition for you. The second, her presentation skills. Is she fluent in the language she's speaking or teaching? Is her content presented systematically? Are ideas woven properly? Or in other words, is there some logic? Questions. Is she asking questions in the classroom? Or is it pure narration, which causes boredom, as you know? What kind of questions is she asking? Are they rote memorization questions? Or are they that can make students think? Is she showing visuals, relevant visuals? Are they displayed properly? Are they of good size? Does she attempt to refocus? Now, refocusing also is absent in our system. When a teacher goes about teaching, she tries to draw comparisons with the same discipline or with other discipline. You may call it as correlation. But refocusing goes beyond that because children can draw out analogies. For example, if I say a root anchors itself in the soil very firmly, it's very difficult to pull it out. Similarly, for a building not to fall, it has to be having a sound foundation. So a child should be made to think in this fashion, wherein he starts drawing analogies, and then you'll see his thinking will always be out of the box. Classroom management, very often when a teacher enters the class, her body language, which we also call as body politics, is very important. The way she carries herself, the way her shoulders are positioned, the way her eye movement takes place during teaching, the gestures that she uses, the participation that she encourages, that she allows students from every corner of the class to participate. All this comes under classroom management. Yes, teacher disposition is basically her personality, her voice, her bass, voice modulation. Many things go into it. So all these 7 aspects are very important before a teacher teaches anything in the classroom. Next. We talked about developing thinking and we talked about divergent thinking. Convergent thinking is developed very easily, and it is there across boards, and it is promoted a lot even in the examination, unfortunately. Because we stress on memory, we want them to describe, we want them to explain. Comprehension, we want them to give a little elaborate on some point. We go a little beyond that, and that's application for us, but application based on knowledge and understanding. It's not application in new situations. Once again, we lose out, but we do find that this is being introduced in different institutions. We should look more on the right-hand side. Are we developing analytical thinking? Are we looking at a whole into parts and then bringing the parts into a whole. I find this lacking a lot. I've been a teacher educator for approximately 16 years. And during my tenure, observing different students, trying to coach them, I've observed seasoned teachers too. And I found this aspect missing. They would teach different parts of this, different systems of the body, say nervous system, respiratory system, circulatory system, and all the possible systems. But never a unified body, and then breaking them into systems, and then the body functioning in a harmonious manner. This was never emphasized upon. Okay, so each part was explained well, but giving a holistic picture was never done. So when you talk of analysis, we need to see that students analyze and then try to give a whole picture of it. The next you have, just a minute, I'm just, okay, I can't read the slide because I think the picture is coming a little, okay. Can you hear me? Am I audible?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Yes, yes. The next is inquiry. Inquiry means building curiosity. We talk of critical thinking, but we never have moved in this direction. Let me cite some examples here. Okay, a simple example. Should cars be allowed to be parked for dropping their students at the gate of the school? Now, students could be asked these questions, 5th standard and above, very easily. Then such a simple question will warrant responses. And you could tell them to positively respond, negatively respond. Okay, positively, they'll give you some points. They'll say, yes, we get dropped very easily and we can enter our school building. They may say there are no security issues. They may give some more points which are forthcoming, and they'll say we don't waste time. Time is saved because we're dropped just at the gate. And so on and so forth. Negative points that come across could be, can you give me some points at least? What could be the negative points?
It will cause a block to other people to enter.
Very good. Okay, the negative points for the child would be taking a longer time from the car where he's being dropped to the gate of the school. Say the car is 200 meters away from the school gate. So taking a longer time for the child.
Traffic jams.
Second, there
Traffic
could
jams.
be, yeah, traffic jam. Traffic jam, yes. Problem, that will be issues. For the child, we are looking at for the learner. His comfort's positive, his comfort's negative. So secondly, he has to travel a distance, and if there is a road to cross, then chances of an accident are high. Third negative could be security concerns. The fourth is, if he's on dot of time, then he may be late for school, and then he may be punished when he enters his class late. Now we are looking at positives, we are looking at negatives, and then issues, as you mentioned, traffic jam. Okay, cars cannot move out, and then there is a little bit of aggression, anger. Probably morning joggers or walkers, they also face a problem. People can't move about freely. So what have I used? I've used just one statement. I draw out the positives. I draw out the negatives from the students. And then I also look at the other aspect of what could be the issues. This is called as PNI, a very good way of building inquiry in students. Am I limited to only these type of questions? No, I can have many, many, many more and in different disciplines. I can cite a few examples that I've jotted. What is the shortest way of solving any mathematical problem? Teachers are conditioned that they should be following this step and then the next step, the third step, the fourth step. And if even one step is missed and the student jumps a step, his marks get cut. But why don't we appreciate a child who can solve a 10-step problem in 3 steps? And it's possible. Okay, you want them to think. So we don't give the opportunities for that. Why do we need to study location and extent in geography? We never ask such questions. We talk of different countries, and it starts with location and extent. They start memorizing latitudes and longitudes and the square feet or square meter or square kilometer area of that particular country. But nowhere do we ask this question, why? What could be the different reasons we need to know location and extent in geography? What would happen if major rivers in India dried? What would be the situation like? Asking them to visualize. We never do that. Let me take one in science. What will happen if Newton's third law of motion fails to operate? If it does not function, what could happen? And believe me, these questions can be asked. Of course, this was a question for the higher classes, but for a class 1 child, I tried this out. What do you think will happen if there were no rains? I got beautiful responses. So we as teachers, to a large extent, can develop thinking. And believe me, if we do it at the school level, then half our work is done. We are shaping very good individuals for the society because they get the spirit of inquiry. Inductive deductive is another form of questioning. It's a form of reasoning, actually, wherein you give ideas or you give statements and you arrive at the concept. It's effectively used in grammar. It's used in mathematics and also science to a large extent. This method makes students undergo the process of thinking. By inductive is you give the examples and the students arrive at the concept, processing thinking, looking at the examples. Deductive is you give the definition or the statement and they provide you with examples later. Inductive is more effective than deductive. Then you have this interpretative, once again missing in our system. We underestimate our children here too. We can give them a set of data, say marks data, only 10 students in mathematics and science. Ask them to read that data and give their views on it. Correct them if you want, or you want to ask them how to present this information, how do you want it to be interpreted, but ask them to interpret. They'll come with wonderful answers. They'll say 5 students have got more than 8 marks and these many students. So then you can ask them, how will you judge them? And that's the time they'll start evaluating. These students have done very well, fairly well. We don't do that also. We only give a set of data, ask them to, draw graphs, and that too at higher levels. Let them look at the population graph, but you never ask them to read exactly the population in 2011 was this, and in 2021, this is the size of the population. What can you say? They draw bar diagrams and you're very happy about it. But we never go into the nuances of it. What do you think has happened? What other problems are associated with this? Then you're talking of reflective thinking. They start thinking. You have problem solving. Of course, these are once again conditioned to the disciplines. They're never general problems. You can give the ones that I mentioned above are also problems. But we want them to have, frame a hypothesis and go in a very scientific way. Allow them to do what they want and then streamline. Finally, evaluative thinking. This also we do not know. To some extent, it's done in English. After the end of a lesson, the teacher may ask that there are how many characters in the story? Can you draw a character sketch? Okay. Most of the time, the answers are got from the guides or they just replicated from the textbook. Instead, we can ask them to organize a small competition, an essay writing competition, handwriting competition, and draw out some criteria so that the students who participate are evaluated on that criteria. That small exercise we can ask them to do. But no, our questions are very standard, very standard. Is science a boon? occurs to mankind. And the answers are already given in the textbook. So this is not an evaluation level question. The student again is going back to the knowledge level because he's reading it from the textbook. We never ask him to frame some criteria of his own, even in this case, in such a question, and then answer. So according to me, my belief is divergent type of questions should be encouraged a lot in the classroom. Next slide. Next slide, Deepa.
Deepa ma'am, next slide.
Got stuck, ma'am. Just a minute.
Yeah. Yeah, we're talking about pedagogy. It's a Greek word actually, pedagog, which stands for the art of teaching children, and this is how this word was derived. Now, it's very difficult to define pedagogy, though I've tried to make it very simple. It's tailor-made by the teacher to suit the needs of the learner. So what actually happens here? What do you say when it's a pedagogy? Then the teacher may use, say, various methods of teaching to shape her lesson for that particular class. And that becomes a pedagogy. So can you say pedagogy is a mix of methods? Yes. Can a teacher exclusively use one method? It's very difficult, but even if she uses one method, it's pedagogy. So basically shaping the classroom, the teaching in the way the teacher wants, very important, tailor-made, how she wants. So her philosophy of teaching plays a very big role in pedagogy. I'm a science teacher. I always like to ask questions. So my lessons may have 85% of the time questions rather than explanations or narrations. So the style with which the teacher teaches depends upon her own philosophy, her own beliefs. And she tries to, she makes it tailor-made so that students absorb what she's speaking. It's very important that there is a congruency in her teaching and the learner's understanding of her teaching. So she has to know the pulse of her learners and accordingly shape the pedagogy. I think we've come to the next. Okay, some premises. Let's go to the next. It's mental readiness. And we've talked about this. I think we've come to an earlier slide.
Deepa ma'am.
Now there's a repetition, I think. Can we go to the next? Yeah.
Not this.
We talked about feedback. Any teaching should end in feedback. It may be a 35-minute lesson. It may be a 1-hour lesson. What is the feedback you're giving? If you don't give a feedback, there is no purpose. The teaching loses its purpose. It's information given by the teacher to the learner about her performance in relation to the outlined learning outcomes. Whatever the teacher wanted to achieve, has it been achieved? And the student gives the test and then she gives a feedback. No, you're poor in this area. This area has to be improved upon. You need to work a lot on this. And I've talked a little about it, but how should the feedback be? It should be non-judgmental. It should be very respectful. The words that you choose while giving a feedback, you're hopeless in maths, your marks are very poor, you're never going to do better. Don't be judgmental, be highly respectful. Be very, very specific. And it should be given immediately. Time is a very important factor while giving feedback. Often we give feedback after time lapses, and then it's not very effective. They say strike the iron when it's hot. The same thing applies here too. It should be action-oriented. Yes, the child, suppose he's weak, say in some area of mathematics, then you give 10 more sums and take action and see that he corrects himself and gains 100% mastery. It's a continuous process. There are no stop-gap arrangements here. It's a continuous process. So feedback, that's fine, is a gift. It's given with permission. The main intention is for the growth of the student. It's for the person and not about the person. And finally, it is targeted for the success of the individual. So if we keep these things in mind, feedback plays a very important role in the growth of a student. Next slide, please. Now we have group teaching methods, and there is a little bit of confusion here. How do I group a method and where do I place it? Educators have different preferences, but nonetheless, it could be grouped in this fashion. When you're looking at the human component purely, they could be framed as teacher-centered methods versus student-centered methods. If you want high level of interaction in your class, then you could also mention it as low interactive versus high interactive methods. If it's based on the level of thinking that it's going to generate, then convergent versus divergent. You want convergent classrooms or divergent versus divergent. If it's based on the technology usage, low technology versus high technology. Do not get confused by these methods, because most of our methods of teaching in the Indian system fit into all the four. Next slide. Yes. Broadly, they are classified in this manner. You have teacher-centered, partially teacher-centered, student-centered. Now we don't have any more purely teacher-centered methods. These are expository methods, teacher-centered methods, where the teacher is the sole person, she's active, and the learners are passive, just listening to her or staring at her. We are not sure whether active listening is taking place. So we are not talking much about this. Let us look at the middle one. Today, lectures are interspersed with a lot of questions and visuals. So we can't say that they are purely teacher-centered. It's partially teacher-centered. Even explanation, where questions are asked and responses are elicited from the students. And in that case, it again becomes partially teacher-centered methods. Now, these methods, teacher and partially teacher-centered methods, are sometimes low on technology, not always. They're low on technology. Why? Because the teacher plays an active role. And she is the one who's the instructor. She is the one who guides. So there is not much chance for the learner to act on his own. The liberty provided is very much limited. So as a result, these methods are low on technology. Let's go to the learner-centered methods. There are a number of learner-centered methods. We have project method, discussion method, case history method, assignment method, inquiry-based method, problem-solving method, discussion method, games, laboratory method. Now, all these methods are purely student-centered methods. And here, the scope for using technology is very, very high. Say, for example, project. Now, you assign a project to a student, and then he has to go and work on it. He has to search information. So his research skills are very important. He may plan to collect the data present there and then represent it in different forms. It could be a pie graph, a bar graph, line graph, graphically, pictorially. So he's working with a lot of technology, or putting a lot of technology into his work. The same happens with discussion. Why is discussion again a student-centered method? Is it technologically supposed to be interactive? High? In other words, does technology come into play? It depends upon the teacher. It can be done both ways, synchronous as well as asynchronous. Synchronous means face-to-face situation, asynchronous, remote. So you can ask the students to form groups. So you have WhatsApp groups, you have Facebooks, and they can discuss and they can arrive at, you can place some students in one group and they decide, and there's a presenter who gives a presentation. So then it becomes high on technology. So it's up to you as a teacher, how you want to use technology and bring it into your teaching. Next slide, please. We're arriving at something called as online, which is dominating our teaching learning system today. Online teaching and learning is teacher-delivered instruction via the internet. It includes real-time, that's synchronous, and anytime, anywhere, asynchronous interactions. And I think we are all conversant with this. I need not go much into it. Some of the tools normally used by each one of us who are into it is Zoom, your Microsoft Teams, your Skype, your Google Meet, and your many more. But these are simple and easy to operate. Next.
ज्या गोष्टी आत होत्या त्या पुसून ठेवल्या ना सगळ्या. ठीक.
Mrs. Joshi, please mute.
Is there some question to be asked?
I don't think so, ma'am. There was
Yeah, no, I got some conversation. That's it.
Ma'am, I went to the next slide. You wanted me to go to the next slide or should I go to the previous one?
No. I think you're on the right slide now, Deepa.
Okay. Okay, ma'am.
Some tips for teachers. I know they have received a lot of tips because they have been trained into this. Most of the schools have been given training to their teachers. The teachers need to plan for each online class and share it prior to the lesson. Probably this aspect is missing because I come across students and this never happens. Okay. So actually the framework of what is going to be taught can be shared. So the student is ready, or there is no other way of creating mental readiness in pupils because they keep staring at the screen. So this aspect needs to be considered and it's important. The next is emphasize online etiquettes to students. This is a very painful area for teachers, especially while teaching. Most of them log in, and after logging in, they are missing from the scene because you can just see one alphabet there or a blank place with their name written down, but they are absent. And when you ask them later, they'll say that, no, I was very much present. No, I couldn't hear. My microphone is not working today. My internet is slow. So all possible excuses are given. Now, when we talk of etiquettes, we also include two more aspects. To keep your speaker on when asked, to keep your cameras on when asked. Otherwise, mute them so that everyone can listen to what the teacher is speaking. And when requested, there are various ways of drawing attention, like raising your hands or thumbs up. And there are so many other emoticons available, and that could be used. Mute the devices except for the speaker. And lastly, this also I've seen lacking because the teachers are so quick with their notes. Sometimes it's really monotonous. You just see pages and pages written or a diagram drawn, and then the screen changes. So give sufficient time for viewing, taking down the notes, viewing an image or a picture, or drawing them on your notebook. So sufficient time can be given to the pupils for this. Next. Plan for each, next, Deepa.
Deepa, ma'am.
It's getting stuck. I was trying it. It's not moving. The slide is not moving.
Okay. Which one is this, Deepa?
It's slide sharing, no? So I'll just minimize it and then maybe I'll be able to do
No,
it.
1 minute. Otherwise, I can operate my other gadget.
1 minute, ma'am. I'm trying. I don't know what. It's come.
Yeah, it's online teaching related concepts. You know, there's a concept of whiteboards now, instead of which has replaced chalkboards or blackboards. And these whiteboards are very, very useful in teaching of different subjects. It could be mathematics, it could be chemistry equations, it could be geography, any subject for that matter. But this board is very useful for showing the actual working. If a teacher wants to demonstrate her drawing skills, she wants to show or draw how a heart looks like, she can draw and show them the different parts. She wants to solve a sum in mathematics, that can be worked out. Maps can be drawn. Many things can be done using a whiteboard. Okay, the options are limitless. So digital boards have replaced chalkboards. Then there's something called as work planning tools, very useful for the teacher to maintain work schedule. So you have apps like Google Calendar, Calendly. Now this specifically is used. You have, say, on 25th February, you have a class on this particular subject. So that can be noted. Even your time for the class is noted. Okay, there are various other apps also available for this, but these are commonly used by teachers, Google Calendar and Calendly. Then your document management tools, which basically store, organize, and manage documents from test papers to lesson plans to mark records. Anything and everything gets recorded in these tools. So you have MS Office for it. Your OneDrive, you just save your things on OneDrive, it automatically gets saved. The present day computers have this feature that whatever you write gets saved on OneDrive. You have Dropbox also for maintaining your documents. These documents are maintained in cloud, so you can get them from anywhere. Then you have online video tools, which the teacher uses, or she can have her own videos made. You have the YouTube, you have the Loom that are commonly used by teachers. And today, if you see most of the videos that are prepared by people who are not even technically qualified. So it's so simple how to prepare a YouTube video. You can make your own YouTube video and show it to the class in advance, and then ask questions based on that. So you can play with technology a lot, even with online teaching learning. Next slide. You have online homework platforms where teachers can keep track of students' homework, their assignments, their projects. You have Google Docs where written assignments can be kept. You have the Zoom, the Skype, and other video conferencing apps where you can have verbal assignments. Okay, you have the Loom, YouTube we talked about, or Google Slides for videos and presentations. It's very easy to operate Google Slides. Google Classroom can be used for distributing assignments, grading, and sending the feedback to parents or students likewise. And finally, you have the social media channels. You know about Facebook, you have LinkedIn, you have WhatsApp, and many more. You have Discord, you have Instagram for communication and presence after online class hours. Basically, these three are often used in education. The others are more social media channels used for chatting, etc. Next. Let us look at some strategies that teachers can use. The normal strategies used in the Indian setting is hybrid teaching. Okay, but here I've just listed a few of them. We have flipped learning, you have blended learning, hybrid learning, your game-based learning, your blogs, live chats, discussion boards, and forums. The last three, I'm not very sure the extent to which teachers use in our classrooms, but flipped and blended could be tried in our settings. Next slide. Okay, what is flipped learning? Schoolwork at home and homework at school. It's a very interesting way of learning. Can be used for secondary level students. And in this form of learning, the teacher is not in the classroom. She assigns work to students. You have to study this chapter on electricity, and I want you to study X, Y, Z. She even mentions the teaching points there, what I want you to exactly study. Then the student comes to the classroom and the teacher breaks them into groups. They discuss and then they present. It's as simple as that. So you have a pictorial representation here. You have the traditional classroom. And here you have the teacher teaching and then homework is given. Here it's the reverse. The student does his homework in the flipped classroom first, as the teachers instructed him. And later on, there are classroom activities. Now, these classroom activities that are there trigger critical thinking in students. Why? Because basically they are divided into small groups. And then they are asked to discuss amongst themselves and then give their presentation to the teacher. The teacher may give add-ons here. She may introduce a research component in her teaching. Okay, find out how electricity trips, which may not be there in their content. What are the reasons for electricity tripping? They'll go there, search extra from the library, and then get back the information. So here It's just schoolwork at home and homework at school. Teachers didn't try this out in our setting. They just gave assignments or they just gave content to be learned. But this could be really tried out. Next. There's something called as blended learning. Once again, it's a mixture of both the methods. It's face-to-face and online. What's the difference here? The teacher teaches in a face-to-face situation. That's a traditional classroom method. She is giving all her inputs. And then the students, at their own pace, time, location, work on whatever she has taught. Of course, she has posed some questions or assignments. Then they work remotely, but basically using multimedia. It's high on technology here because the insistence by the teacher in blended learning is you have to use maximum number of technological tools. I want a video presentation of this. Okay. Then you will have to have a webinar. You want a webinar. So the student has to be prepared, making use of multimedia. So there is more of technology in this as compared to flipped learning. Flipped learning is more of a group discussion. Small groups, breaking, and a little bit of technology. It could be high on technology, but here the technology applied is much more. So the digital media used is higher here as compared to flipped learning. This kind of learning is called blended because it's a combination of traditional plus digital. Next. Hybrid, this is what we practice in Indian classrooms and it's being done at the moment. It implements synchronous lessons taught simultaneously in person and online. Both go hand in hand, in person and online. Okay, in the Indian context now, or schools today, at least in Mumbai, schools work for 2 or 3 days in a week, so it's synchronous there. And then they come back and the remaining 3 days, it's online. A form of hybrid learning is another form of hybrid learning. Here, the teacher asks the students to be present in the classroom, synchronous, and at the same time, online. This happened, I think it happens even here, if I'm not mistaken, but here it's on different days. Otherwise, sometimes they go in the morning to the school and then the afternoon time is spent online. So basically, this form of learning is called as hybrid learning. How fruitful it is still to be found because we are not very sure. Actually, it's a makeshift arrangement taking place because of the pandemic present. Next. Is game-based learning. Very interesting. Actually, in lower classes, you have a lot of games. And if you open your computer, you have a lot of games which lead you to learning in mathematics. It could be in science, it could be in geography. But when you have the higher classes, it becomes a little difficult. I'll just share one game, and that could be used for different subjects too. It could be used in English grammar. It could be used in geography, anywhere. Say, suppose the teacher is using the whiteboard. It's an online class. She's using the whiteboard and the students are attending her class. Now she has grouped the students. She has made or drawn a square and there are 4 corners to that square. And she writes the roll number. Say there are 20 students. So she writes 1, 3, 5, 7. On the opposite side, she writes 9, 11, 13, and 15. And then she takes probably 20. So one more 4th corner also gets filled up. Okay, 17, 19, and so on. And then similarly, the odd are taken in the other 2 corners. They are interspersed. 20 are interspersed in the 4 corners of 5, 5, according to their roll numbers. And now she poses a very challenging question. Now, these students discuss in the group through WhatsApp, through Messenger, they discuss. Now, the student who gives fastest the responses, they are awarded. They may be awarded with just a clap, okay, or else scored. It can also be used as an assessment procedure for team team evaluation. So one team, if you want to score them, you can score them. And if it's a content-based question which demands grading, it can be done very easily. So this is one kind of game that can be played. There are many other games of similar nature, but as I told you, for the lower classes, it's very easy, but for higher classes, you can only use video games or so. But the danger here is they should not be addicted to this gaming procedure. But the teacher could create such games of different kinds and then evaluate them or award points to them. And this can be done in a definite framework, time framework, keeping, of course, the learning outcomes in mind, what she exactly wants to achieve through this game. Okay, so it's a different strategy that she can use. So what happens in this particular thing is students get engaged, understanding that it's a game, they are challenged. Second, those who are introverts, who are a little shy of speaking, also participate very actively. So that's why this technique is a very useful technique, rarely used in Indian classrooms. We have the blogs, very interesting strategy. Anyone can open a blog, their own blog, and they can keep writing about a particular topic. They can improve on their research skills, keep adding information to it. Even blogging here is not encouraged much at the secondary level, but they definitely can. If students have their own blogs, they can share them later with their friends. They can exchange information, so their knowledge levels enhance on that particular area, but they don't do it here. Next, live chat and discussion boards. They are strategies used by students to communicate, replicate classroom learning. Whatever is taught in the classroom, they share it with among the group. It's a live chat, but a live chat means they keep responding. They keep responding, they talk to each other. A question is asked, responded. A question is asked, responded, and they do so, they clarify doubts. This is done here. Live chatting goes on. It's quite frequent. Students exchange notes. Students also try to help each other in mathematics and different subjects. So live chatting is common in the Indian setting. WhatsApp, you have Facebook Messenger, you have Skype, etc.
I was worried about what would others say if I get committed to you as I had got to agree.
Then you have discussion boards and forums, a place where students again share their learning with added information. You have platforms, you have WhatsApp groups, you have Creately. Creately is a very good platform for this. Whatever you discuss, you share with the group. Rich information is generated, which is again shared. It's an intellectual setting. If you see, these settings are all very intellectual and they have a purpose, especially discussion boards and forums. Live chatting could be taken very casually. They could have a personal touch sometimes, but these discussion boards and forums are professional boards. They are intellectual groups who come together and then they have a common purpose. A lot of information gets shared and disseminated. So it's a very beautiful platform for this purpose. Next. Yes, we have talked a lot about strategies that are used online and a few offline, though I have touched upon them very superficially. Now let's look at assessment, because some teachers often come to me and ask, how do we assess? We want to make it simple. We want to see that it's comprehensive. When we talk of evaluation, it has to be comprehensive too. So they ask such questions. So some of the suggestions, these are my own suggestions. You can have short answer questions that could be asked in a written fashion or oral fashion and evaluated on the spot. They're short answer questions. What are short answer questions? Short answer questions run into one sentence or two sentences and not beyond.
Hello.
Okay. And they have some marking scheme. So their objective can be evaluated on the spot and the teacher can award marks immediately. Then you have recitations, presentations.
Yep.
Okay. Recitation, say your poetry recitation, your Hindi poem recitation, or you can give a presentation based on some criteria, marking criteria, and that could be marked. You could have some graphical presentations which could be marked. You can ask students to draw the graph and mark them. Now marking becomes very easy. And if your criteria, or what we also call as, you can prepare a rubric. Okay. If a rubric is created, then evaluation becomes very easy. There could be pictorial representation. There could be diagrammatic representations. So teachers can give on the spot markings to in such situations. The third normally practiced these days is multiple choice items. They should have meaningful stems. If the stems are not meaningful, then you give simple options, and then the stem is not meaningful. You are not testing their level of thinking. It's just an exercise, an objective exercise, which is very simple and has no meaning. So, creating multiple choice questions is not an easy affair. It's very difficult. Okay. If you want good stems and you want appropriate responses, the responses should be such that two responses could be identical with only a line of difference. And so students are confused. So if you really want to test how much they know, you have to prepare really good multiple choice items. You could have students have webinars. Let them give a presentation. Let there be a question answer session at the end, and you evaluate the presentation and how they answer questions towards the end. You could have discussions such as brainstorming, debates, declamations. There are so many. They are endless. And how you evaluate them? Do you want the group to be evaluated and the group gets 9 marks on 10 and all the members in the group get 9? Or how do you want to actually evaluate? It depends on you. You can have games. You can ask students to create crosswords, quiz, puzzles. Okay. So you have a large variety here. You can ask students to create and then check on the learning object, as you have given this area of content. Is that area of content completely covered through this particular game? And mark them. All the same, whatever you do, you have to give a feedback. Feedback is very, very important. Next. I'll just take 5 minutes more, Deepa. Is it okay?
Okay, ma'am.
Ma'am, it's okay.
Yeah. There are some challenges faced by teachers teaching online, and it becomes a little difficult for them. Some of the challenges: learning and handling various tools. First awareness about the tools, then learning how to operate them. Because till now, even clicking or owning the computer was challenging. I'm not talking about all, but many of them. How do you handle the various tools? How do you go to Zoom? How do you learn about the features of the Zoom? How do you go to Google Meet? How do you prepare slides on Google? Okay, which is better among the two and when? How do you operate WebEx, etc.? So knowing about these tools, handling these tools is a challenging task. And that became a limitation during online teaching. Then further, they have to teach students who are using these tools, who are going to use these tools, are going to understand these tools through the teacher. Very often network is the biggest problem. The best excuse, but the biggest problem, poor network. It could be from the teacher's side, the student's side. And this becomes the biggest limitation, a challenge for the teacher. How does she proceed with her class? And when it happens during examination, it's a disaster. And it has happened. Life situations I know about, where the paper has been given online. It's there on their computer screens, and suddenly there's no network. And the student cannot answer. The teacher can't even find out whether it's genuine or not. Next, repeating instructions for maintaining classroom discipline. Okay, repeatedly telling them, I want to see your faces on your cameras. I want to know whether you're attending the class. What's your level of attention? Are you really understanding what I'm teaching you? There's no mode of communication wherein the teacher exactly knows the depth of learning students have experienced after her lesson. There is no way she can find out. Because it's online. So physical discipline is excellent. the problems that she faces in the live classroom, those problems she does not face during online, but there are other problems. Has learning really taken place? Which students is weak in which area? So diagnostic, diagnostic strategy cannot be used here. She cannot diagnose which area unless and until she administers a test. And to what extent the test reveals results, and can she give a feedback and improve on her teaching? I don't know if you have heard that in these 2 years, through online teaching, the results of evaluation assessment has been very poor. They've dipped. I was in a school 2 days back. The principal of the school told me that earlier 80%, now it's not even 50% during the tests. You know, there's normal tests or unit tests that they have. I'm talking about 8th, 9th, 10th. Okay. So the students, are they on Netflix? Or are they doing playing with some other window? We do not know. So this is one. So the teacher has to repeatedly keep telling students, are you listening? Are you understanding? Do you want me to explain again? Teachers are putting in all efforts, but these are some of the limitations. Ensuring students' attention all through the lesson. That again, that's what I said just now, and I'm repeating. So these are the challenges faced by teachers online. The next one, last one, of course. Next slide. So yes, I would like to wind my presentation. I have only one question in mind. And that question is, does online education serve its purpose? Can we do away with traditional method of teaching? What should be practiced in the future? These are questions which are food for thought for educators all over. Researchers are in the offing. No conclusive findings have been found still, but this question still remains in our minds. Should we continue with online teaching, or should we just say bye-bye to teaching, online teaching, and continue with our traditional methods of teaching? A big thank you to each one of you for patiently listening. I know I have not made it very interactive. The nature of the topic itself is a little dry and heavy on content. So I had to flow through the information, though it was not much detailed, but I'm sure you got a glimpse of whatever I have said or spoken during this session. A big thank you to each one of you.
Thank you, Ambuja ma'am. Right from the word go till the end of the session, we could relate to each and every word that you said. The session was indeed insightful. It was thought-provoking too. No matter how old or young we are, we all definitely love listening to stories. And today's session, you began with a snippet. And through the introductory snippet, ma'am, I think you have touched almost all aspects of curriculum planning, from convergent to divergent thinking, from reflective thinking to research, and how important it is to engage with the learner. Right from the olden times, the traditional method of teaching, to the present online mode. You have covered almost each and every topic related to curriculum, ma'am. Thank you once again. It was very relevant and informative. Thank you. Thank you very much, ma'am. And now the session is open for questions. If anybody would like to ask any question, you can go ahead. If not, I have a couple of questions.
Yes.
Yes, anyone? If at all, any thought comes to your mind, please post it in the chat box so that we can all have it answered. Well, ma'am, I have a question.
Yes.
Like most of the time, we find that teachers shy away from training. Whenever a training session has to be attended, most of the teachers shy away from it. So how important is it for teachers to undergo in-service training or in teaching methodology in the context of fast-changing curriculum?
curriculum changes every 5 years. But that trend may change now because of information explosion and the way technology is exploding at the rate which it is exploding. Windows 10 has gone and Windows 11 has come into the picture. It's as fast as that. So one needs to undergo an update and try to sharpen your skills in those areas which you feel you're lacking in. We are never short of information. We have so many websites which provide us with a lot of information. It's only how do we go about it? I still could not figure out exactly what you're asking. Are you asking about the skills that are required for a teacher?
Yes, ma'am,
To teach
exactly.
effectively.
In the present changing
Can you
context.
repeat your question? I can answer it in a better.
In the context, in the curriculum, I'm asking this question with regards to the changes in the curriculum. So how important it is for teachers to first understand these changes in the curriculum through the various training that is imparted.
Training is just for sharpening your skills, as I told you, in different areas. They just want to update you with the skills. But then exactly what you want is the information that's in the curriculum that's changing. What is curriculum actually? Curriculum is a course to be run. Now that course may have add-on activities. They may have add-on experiments, okay? Add-on information. So curriculum is everything that goes into a course. It could be a curricular activities, it could be our extracurricular activities, and everything that is to do with completing that year's program in the form of projects, etc. So do you require training for that? One. The second question, when we talk about increase or change in curriculum, is are the textbooks changing often? If the textbooks are changing often, you also need to update yourself in the latest content. Okay. Now, how, as a teacher, how I went about with it was, suppose an area of content change or kept changing. I know some basic information regarding that area. I would just look at that updated area and add on. That was the fastest and the best way I could do. Skill dimension, I wouldn't like to comment. If you're a science teacher, I wouldn't know the latest skills required in college for a science teacher. If you're talking about the skill dimension, curriculum is going to change. Curriculum is dynamic. Okay. There's no second thought to it. It's not going to be old wine in a new bottle that used to happen earlier. Today with technology, there's a lot of new information. Knowledge is exploding. So one has to be relevant and in touch with. Though I may sound a little out, I am outdated because I retired in 2006, say 15 years back, but still I keep in touch with everything that's happening in education, just to be relevant. But I wouldn't, I would be challenged actually by a teacher who's working in the classroom. She would definitely know much more than what I know because she's handling the curriculum. So I can talk theoretically about the curriculum, but actually what's happening in the setting, I wouldn't know much about.
Well said, ma'am. Curriculum should always reflect the changes that goes in the society.
Yes.
Yeah. Ma'am, as a language teacher, I find that most of our students are not well equipped in answering open-ended questions, or I may call it as personal response questions. So what can be done to overcome this hurdle? Like?
See, as I told you, you know, it's a, what you say, the KG teacher passing on the blame to the primary to secondary, secondary to the higher secondary and the college level. And that's what is happening in our system. Each one passes the buck that you did not do your job well, so I have to suffer. So now these students, I don't know from what setting they come, but there are a lot of liberties today in the system itself. You can call them as loopholes or liberties. They enter the system and they are not asked for any, what you say, criteria or expertise before entering a particular course. You should be having X, Y, Z. So I too was surprised in my department, a government department, when an English teacher who couldn't speak a word of English and was from Satara, had MA in English first class from there and couldn't speak a word, but I invited him for a session and that was the last time I did it also. He was not fluent at all. Vocabulary was very poor. So I don't know, how do we really go about? You can ask them to attend simple conversational skills first. A course on conversational skills could be conducted for them. And then probably you can bring them up to your standards. It's very difficult today to debate. I was on the panel once for this B.Ed college, and these were students who wanted to come, I'm sure not students, to be teachers. They had come for the interview to be appointed in that particular college. And while I was talking to the science teacher, who was very ambitious, and I asked her, you have to teach this topic on atom for a class 5 student. How are you going to teach? What are the different methods you'll use for teaching this topic? Just give me a simple explanation, or narrate it to me, or say how you want to say. She couldn't say anything. She told me, ma'am, why are you asking this question? You know, when the time comes, I'll refer to the textbook and then follow that particular method and teach. That was the response given. And she wanted to be a faculty at one of the prominent B.Ed college in Mumbai. So the situation is not only in your discipline, it's there in every discipline today. It's because of the lacunae existing in the system. We absorb everyone. They undergo a training course. You must have heard the latest scam of TET, teacher education tests, what happened in Pune, and now it's being exposed. Now these teachers enter the system. So if teaching is by choice, this is going to be a problem. That's why they say it should be a vocation. So you should have that passion, and then only you can come up. So try and tell your students to undergo a conversational program, or you have a 12-hour course on conversational English and see the improvement.
Yeah.
So they stand up.
The blame should be put on rote memorization. That's the root cause of, I think, everything. Ma'am, here, anybody else would like to ask question, or should I carry on?
No one, teacher.
Okay, fine, ma'am. I would like to ask a few more questions here, ma'am. Ma'am, the new education policy has already been introduced. To what extent can this new education policy solve the pedagogical problems that we see right now?
Yeah, I think, you know, to a large extent, see, the academic industry interface is not very good. The picture is not very good. Okay. Students who graduate and come out have no realistic view of the world or of that discipline which they plan to take up as a career. So this is going to be narrowed down. So there will be a lot of academic industry interface. So you'll find the world of work more interesting. Students with real interests will come. It will improve productivity. Okay, so the NEP plans to do that. Right from rote memorization, the style of education, the way education is to be imparted is going to change. It's already changing. It's already changing. But that is where, you know, I just feel there's not much seriousness in this area from the side of the teachers. I've seen projects being given to students, but the projects stand no meaning except for cut, copy, paste from the internet, from the Google. Wherever, whichever website they go to, they cut, copy, paste and submit their projects. Okay, so there is not much of thinking. That's why I introduced this game-based learning, crosswords, puzzles. The new education policy attempts to do all that. So to make learners independent, develop critical thinking.
Yeah.
Critical thinking.
The whole idea of project-based learning becomes meaningless when children try to copy-paste things.
Exactly, and it's cut, copy, paste. I'm seeing it right in front of my eyes.
Yeah, yeah.
Then they get full 20 on 20. So what's the point? You tell me you may have an NEP. What's the point?
Yeah. Okay, ma'am, what are the different evaluation techniques that we can devise so that education becomes truly holistic and all-encompassing, especially in an oversized classroom? It becomes very difficult to evaluate students in an oversized classroom.
That's why I gave some tips that you can do online immediately and on the spot. So there are basically, you know, two kinds of questions, broad category of questions. One is the objective and one is the essay type. Under the objective, you have many categories. Now, once you're equipped with the different categories of questions, you have short answer questions, you have fill in the blanks, you have complete the sentences, then you have true and false. You match the following. Now, if you can bring out sensible, suppose your question paper is going to be of 100 marks and you say 30 marks for convergent level questions, and the remaining 70% marks for divergent level questions. And in divergent level, the type of questions, you can have something called as multiple choice and multiple faceted. People think true or false is yes, no. If you have 4 columns in true or, in your match the columns, if you have 4 columns, you have 2 responses and 2 premises, response, premise, 4 columns, so that they match. I'll give you an example. I don't know. In science, I'll try and give you an example. Suppose I'm talking about a cell. I'm talking about cells here. Then I name the scientist. The student has to mark that. After naming that, there will be a 3rd column. That same scientist would have invented or discovered something else. That would be mentioned there. He has to link it up to there. And then that would have the 4th column. So the response gets connected. In other words, a complex topic, or if you want to create complexity, that can be created to a simple match the following, only increasing the number of columns. That's one simple way of evaluation. It's objective, very simple. Simple for you. The one who constructs it, it's simple. Then you have, as I told you, multiple choice. Stems are very important. Once again, you have convergent and divergent. To prepare when you have these competitive examinations, IIT, etc., GATE and all, they do have multiple choice questions only. But then the responses would be identical and the students is confused, which is the right one. And they mark wrong is negative marking. So there is a thin line of differences between the options. And then it becomes difficult for the student to choose. But you as a teacher should be equipped for framing that type of multiple choice question. Okay. So, if you undergo training in a question bank and how to frame questions and how you prepare your blueprint, your marking scheme and scoring key, it's a difficult exercise initially, but then it's beautiful. But why don't you train your students and ask them to generate? The one who prepares 10 very good questions will get this marks if all are right. Ask them to prepare multiple choice, ask them to prepare all these kinds of questions. Done. And then collect. Your bank becomes full. You have a bank before you and you can keep generating question papers one after the other with this. Why are students not given this responsibility? There was a simple exercise that I had done. I told the students, these are the topics. And let me see, I want you to prepare fill in the blanks as many. I want you to prepare this. I want you to prepare this and give it to me. My question papers were ready. I didn't have to sit and break my heads. Okay. So linguistically only I was challenged. The language or the typological error, grammatical error, tense error. That's one structural aspect I have to take care of. Not the type of question. So I trained them how to prepare fill in the blank, how to prepare a true or false, and then gave it. So one area of content divided, the number of questions I got. So we need to, do such exercises and then mark them on it if you want. Your work is done also.
Ma'am, one thing I would like to say.
Yes.
That whatever NEP comes or any education policy comes, ultimately, everything depends upon the teacher himself or herself, whether he or she wants to really implement it or to have it. Otherwise, this policy will be there in the paper and teacher will go on doing whatever he or she likes.
Sir, I 110% agree with you. 110. It's what your inner drive is, the desire that you have for giving your best. And if they have that desire, I don't think, anything will fall short here.
Correct.
That desire is somehow lacking. I try to, wherever I go, I talk even about desire. I tell you that passion, that hunger for teaching should be there. The hunger for giving the best to your students. And don't look at the rewards, monetary rewards or this every time. It doesn't work. Give your best. You have to distribute knowledge. It's your vidya that you have in you, which has to be shared. Give the best.
Correct.
I don't know. Today's teachers are doing, I wouldn't say they are doing. Probably they are challenged with other commitments that they have, personal or otherwise.
That should not be mixed. No, personal commitment should not be mixed with the professional commitment.
Yes, yes. It's an excuse actually, you know.
Correct.
I told you we can create such crosswords, we can create
Yes.
puzzles from students, create quiz from students, make it a collection. During proxy periods, give it. Or if you want to discuss or march over it, do it.
Correct.
You know.
Actually, ma'am, I really envy today's children because in our times we didn't have this so much of activity in our question paper. Today, it's not an evaluation sheet; it is an activity sheet whereby they have all forms of flow chart, web diagram, and all most of the activities that we can see. I mean, if children are really interested, and as you said, if teachers are passionate, then we can achieve wonders.
Ma'am, I'd like to ask a question.
Yes, Deepa ma'am. please carry
Now,
on.
I would just like to say that how important is it for us teachers to begin to work on pedagogies and with their own strengths? And is it really of any help? You know, like we have certain strengths and all, and based on that, we begin with work on our pedagogies. Is it really very important and how useful and fruitful is it? Am I clear in what I'm saying, ma'am? Did you?
Yeah, you want to talk about the effectiveness of your pedagogy? See,
Yeah,
if you believe in
based
something.
on my strengths, based on my
Yeah.
strengths. See, not everybody is equipped with everything.
Correct. But
So-
one needs to understand one's belief and one's strength.
Yes, ma'am.
I know I love to ask questions and questions that are challenging, questions that need thinking. So any content given to me, how simple it is, I'll try to frame a question that demands an answer. Okay. And then I'll keep on probing till I get my ultimate answer. If it's a child, I'll even provide clues so that I get the response. So that's my philosophy of teaching. I don't know whether it's my strength. I have not evaluated my strengths actually. But I do know I want to teach in a manner that is understood by the opposite person thoroughly. And secondly, that person is really excited and motivated. He has to learn. Okay,
ma'am.
so I'll
Okay.
make it that way. I make all attempts.
Okay, thank you. Another thing that just crossed my mind is when Shija ma'am just asked about equipping teachers, you know, for training and all. So many of these trainings, when I have attended some of the trainings, first thing they say is about the icebreaker. And many a times I see, you know, or even in a classroom, what I see is just questions are asked at times. You know, so are there any different ways, you know, of having these icebreakers?
I did not get the term exactly. What did you say? Ice?
Breaker.
Oh, you're talking about icebreakers.
Yes.
No, actually, you know what? One has to understand the content. Like, for example, today I had this snippet with me. I added some masala into it. I tried to bring about a connection with the pedagogy with the main aim of creating mental readiness, building a rapport with the people sitting my audience, because I don't know most of them. So how do I build a rapport? So that was my icebreaker. Very often, when you go and you know your presentation, the content is going to be a little dull. The best icebreaker would be a snippet. Now that
Okay.
you may have to create. Very often I create my very own. I even created one for the end, but looking at the watch, I said, it's not fair on me. I should shut up now and stop. So I had a nice story. If you want to share just now, you want me to share, I'll share it with you.
Yes, ma'am. We could would love to hear.
I wanted to tell this, you know, we are talking about good teachers, effective teachers, teachers, committed teachers. So this is about, I'm sure you may have heard it also, a carrot, an egg, and coffee. These were the three substances. And there was hot water. Now, you know, the carrot is rigid when it is fresh. The moment it's put in hot water, it becomes flexible. Egg is brittle liquid from inside, soft and liquid. So the moment you put it in water, it becomes a hard-boiled egg, sometimes difficult to crack. Third is coffee. The moment I add water to coffee, there's aroma. The smell is so good, okay? And you just want to keep smelling and keep drinking coffee. Now, translating this into something that happens in our lives. If we look at hot water as an adverse situation in life, what happens to people who are rigid earlier, like the carrot? An adverse situation breaks them. Look at the egg. A person who's very soft, who's very kind, who's very timid, who's very gentle. Okay? In an adverse situation of any kind, becomes very hard. That's what happens to the egg. Finally, if you look at the third one, even in adverse situations, aroma is spread. And a teacher should be like that. Okay, so even in adverse situations, COVID, pandemic, etc., we went through horrid times. Okay, the aroma should not stop. The flavor of coffee should not stop. You should be the same. The passion in you should be same. Just because it's online teaching, you should not be low in your spirits. Okay, now you can translate the same example in different contexts. How does a person react when there is a death in the family, or however you want to? This is called as refocusing. So you look at the situation and try to look at different other situations. But in teaching, I've imported it. So I wanted to tell this towards at the end. So a teacher should be like this, like coffee beans. So even in the most adverse of situations that you have had today, that's COVID, she has just spread the aroma, the smell. And she has charmed everyone and given her best. That's what I want.
Thank you, ma'am. That's a compliment to the teachers. Thank you so much.
That's a story I wanted to share.
That's wonderful. Anybody else for any questions? Okay, I think we have done with the questions. Shija,
Ambuja ma'am, I'm very much touched by the story. We will all definitely try to be the coffee beans that you expect us to be. And I think it's the way we react to any situation that makes a difference. So I think we can end the session if there are no more questions. Okay, so before we end today's session, let me propose a vote of thanks. Special thanks to our chief speaker, Ambuja ma'am. It was indeed a pleasure listening to you. Mrs. Deepa Desai and Dr. Suresh Nair for organizing this much needed session, especially for educators, and that too on a core topic such as curriculum. I would also like to thank our wonderful audience. And last but not the least, I would like to thank our technical team, Mr. Inderjit Ratan, for making this session happen. Thank you all. Thank you very much.